Tonight on Toyota World Sport, the Brisbane Strikers move to cash in on their grand final success. Retired Eric Cantona is back on the field. And a freak basket levels the NBA playoffs. This is Toyota World Sports. Good evening. Also tonight, a look ahead to Wednesday's Rugby League State of Origin match between Queensland and New South Wales. First, as the celebrations continue in Brisbane, the Strikers have begun work to capitalise on yesterday's memorable grand final win over Sydney United. On the agenda, a new long-term lease at the Suncorp Stadium, where a 40,000 crowd set a new record for club football. The club will also recruit new players to cover the loss of captain Alan Hunter, who's moving to Carlton, and Gary Phillips and Danny Wright, who've retired. And riding the wave of enthusiasm in Queensland, the Strikers will step up plans for privatisation of the club. For the reaction to the historic Ericsson Cup Grand Final, David Bashir has filed this report.
The changing face of club football and scenes which Soccer Australia hope will become the norm in years to come. The Brisbane Strikers' dramatic 2-0 victory in front of a record crowd of over 40,000 provided the perfect platform in the club's bid to raise capital through a public float. The Strikers successfully tapping into a broad base of sports fans.
I think Australian soccer won today. No one else won. We won the game, but Australian soccer won because it shows what can be done with a team of non-ethnics, a team that was representing Brisbane and Queensland.
It was also music to the ears of Soccer Australia. Chairman David Hill believes all clubs must broaden their support base to survive in the future.
Brisbane have demonstrated and Perth have demonstrated you've got to broaden your support base. Certainly this is further evidence that teams that rely on one community won't be viable in the future.
The Strikers signalled their intentions from the opening whistle. Youngster Shay Hughes fully testing Zelko Kalats.
Already the Strikers have got a shot on goal with Hughes and Kalats.
With the tight contest came frustration from the United goalkeeper.
His career as the ball comes in. Kalats was challenged. Play on according to Simon Mikulev. Well,
seconds later, Farina's reply sent Brisbane fans into a frenzy.
Chance here and it's a goal! Farina has opened the scoring for the Strikers.
United then pushed men up, in the process exposing themselves to a counter-attack. Sean Cranny opening the defence with a searching run.
As is Brown, here's Rob Brown, a second, it is!
It was fitting two veterans, Brown and Farina, scored in their most important victory.
The old boys weren't too bad, were they? Yeah, the old boys came through very well, but the whole side, you know, from the goalkeeper through to the subs who came on and the guys on the bench, it was a fantastic effort.
For player of the match, Alan Hunter, who's moving to Carlton next season, the championship was one of overcoming the odds.
These guys proved today that, you know, when the chips are down and people start writing you off, beginning of the season, 66-1, listen to that crowd. Yeah. It's the greatest day for Australian soccer.
Sydney United again finish a season unrewarded, succumbing to an opponent more hungry for success.
It was never going to be a game where we could just play football. They just got stuck in and it didn't give us time on the ball, and it showed tonight we just couldn't do the job.
And to the many Queensland viewers who complained about no live coverage in Brisbane and nearby areas, SBS's contractual obligations meant we needed Soccer Australia's permission before going live. Although we sought it, we couldn't gain that permission before kick-off yesterday. More of the grand final later on Toyota World Sports. Meantime, Socceroo coach Terry Venables has announced a much-revised squad for trial matches ahead of next month's World Cup qualifying campaign against Tahiti and the Solomon Islands. 16 players from the original 42 named have either withdrawn or made themselves unavailable for 2 games to be played in Melbourne this Wednesday and Sydney next week.
Confirmation today that a dozen of Australia's best players have withdrawn from the Socceroo trial games means the series will go ahead without the nucleus of Australia's World Cup squad. Missing from the 29-man squad are many big names with overseas clubs: Arnold, Moore, Popovic, Schwarzer, Viduka. In Paul Ocon's case, injury has prevented the Lazio midfielder from taking part, while Ned Zelic is also unavailable because he's soon to be married.
European players, of course, we've always knew we're going to have people still involved, all sorts of problems there. We've done the best we can. I've took as strong line as possible. But as it's not an official game, not even an official friendly, I couldn't insist.
That makes way for 3 surprise inclusions: Newcastle's Troy Halpin, Marconi's Luke Casserly and South Melbourne's Fausto De Amicis, all of whom had been overlooked when Venables named his original list of 42 squad and standby players. Today they assembled for the first time in Melbourne. Socceroo assistant Raul Blanco will coach one side and Venables the other.
I'm still not completely made up my mind in what I'm going to look for. This gives them a chance to stake a claim. We'll have another few players coming for the second game.
But still no room for any of Brisbane's championship heroes. One player Venables will monitor closely is Robert Ennis of Sydney United. Reportedly, he's on the verge of signing with Portsmouth, the English First Division club owned by Venables.
Nothing's held up and nothing's gone forward. It's just a matter of an interest. I took videos back, which anyone else is entitled to do, and set the telephone up. I want you to look and see if you feel there's any players there just the same in anywhere else in the world.
Andrew Orsatti, SBS Sport.
Interest in Italy's Serie A is focused on teams vying for spots in Europe next season. Juventus clinched the title last Friday, the 1-1 draw with Atalanta, enough to clinch their 24th league title. Parma are 4 points adrift of the newly crowned champions, while the battle for relegation won't be fully resolved until next week's final round.
Second place Parma, who are chasing a spot in the European Champions League next season, were unlucky not to be a goal behind against a defiant Bologna. However, the only goal came from Italian international Enrico Chiesa, who virtually booked Parma's ticket in Europe next season. In Cagliari, the home team faced a Sampdorian side eager to gain a spot in next season's UEFA Cup competition. Cagliari fought back valiantly, but the 4-3 loss may see the men from Sardinia relegated to the depths of Serie B. After losing the UEFA Cup final, Inter Milan bounced back to defeat Napoli 3-2. English international Paul Ince had a hand in the 3-2 victory, which he dedicated to his fans. Perugia, who are fighting for their Serie A life, produced the goods against Roma by winning 2-0. With 4 teams dropping to the lower divisions, Perugia is 1 point clear of the danger zone. A goal by Croatia's Milan Rapšić may be the one that saves Perugia from relegation. Meanwhile, the race for the Spanish League crown is far from settled, following a rare defeat of leaders Real Madrid by Athletic Bilbao. Carlos Garcia's winner in the 60th minute keeps Real on top, but the margin over second-place Barcelona has been reduced to just 2 points.
Yes, and May's super month of football on SBS is not over. Join us when we cross live to Munich's Olympic Stadium for the European Champions Cup final between Italy's Juventus and Borussia Dortmund of Germany. Coverage starts at 4:15 Eastern Time Thursday morning, with 1 hour's highlights from 8:30 that evening. Former Manchester United star Eric Cantona, who retired from football just 7 days ago, has been back on the pitch and even scored a goal. Cantona isn't making a comeback, though. He was playing in a testimonial match in France.
100 Manchester United supporters made the pilgrimage to France to see Cantona wear a number 7 shirt, probably for the last time. Last week he left Old Trafford without even an au revoir.
We want him back in Manchester. That's where he belongs. Not back over there in France, back home in Manchester.
Tonight he looked mean and moody as he arrived, flanked by bodyguards, to play in a testimonial match in Lille. But the swagger and the strut were still there. It was Cantona's first outing since his decision to quit soccer, he says, to act. The testimonial, however, is likely to be a one-off. For contractual reasons, he won't be allowed to appear in a competitive match for any other club. The fans were rewarded for their faith as Cantona scored a second-half goal, even though his side lost 4-2. United still hope the man whose skills helped take 4 Premiership titles and 2 doubles to Manchester will reverse his decision to retire. That appears unlikely, but tonight a small part of Lille was not giving up hope.
Outspoken Canadian driver Jacques Villeneuve has won the Spanish Grand Prix and immediately turned on Formula One officials over future plans for increased driver safety. The Williams driver described the rules designed to restrict speed as, quote, total crap, and angered fellow drivers by claiming many are in the sport only for the money.
An early demonstration of Michael Schumacher's supreme ability at the start of the Spanish Grand Prix. 7th on the grid, he'd manoeuvred his way past 4 cars before the first corner and up to 2nd place by the end of the first lap. But even Schumacher's skill couldn't compensate for his tyres' lack of durability. Coulthard the first to take advantage on lap 13. None of the drivers, though, knows more about lack of durability than Damon Hill. Once again, his engine expired, this time cruelly right under the noses of the Williams engineers who had guided him to the world title last year. At the front, with Villeneuve well clear, the action behind him was providing the most excitement, with France's Olivier Parnes passing Coulthard and going on to match his second-place finish in Australia. Villeneuve's victory, the 7th of his career and 3rd this season, puts him back at the top of the World Championship ahead of Michael Schumacher, who finished 4th. After the disappointment of Monaco, the Canadian's dominance has been firmly re-established.
Tiger Woods has showed he's only human, taking 2 double bogeys in his final round of the PGA Colonial Golf Tournament and slipping to equal 4th behind South Africa's David Frost. First round leader Brad Faxon and David Ogrin tied for 2nd, with Steve Elkington the best of the Australians. Woods was at 16 under and tied for the lead when he double bogeyed the 9th by landing his ball in the water. Another double bogey on 17 cost the young American any chance of his 3rd successive PGA victory, and it was South African David Frost who went on to win the tournament by 2 shots. Nice putt. Spain has clinched its 4th World Team Cup tennis title by defeating Australia 3-0 in this morning's final. Felix Mantilla proved too strong for Mark Woodford to give Spain the lead. Albert Costa saved 2 match points before defeating Mark Philippoussis in 3 sets, while the Woodies suffered a rare loss in the doubles.
In the first match, Mark Woodford faced Felix Mantilla. The opening set was even, but Woodford faltered at 5-all, the Spaniard taking advantage with spectacular clay court tennis. Mantilla went on to give Spain a 1-0 lead, winning 7-5, 6-2. Australia needed a win from Mark Philippoussis to stay in the final. His opponent Albert Costa had his work cut out for him. The Australian's power was unmistakable, but even his world record serve at 229 kilometres per hour was not enough to win the match. Costa fought off 2 match points to give Spain an unbeatable 2-0 lead. The doubles were a formality, the Spaniards adding to their success against the Woodies to win the tie 3-0. The players won't have much time to celebrate, with the French Open starting tonight.
The Australian women's hockey team has beaten Spain 2-1 in the 2nd test in Madrid. The Hockeyroos are using the 3-test series as a warm-up to the Champions Trophy in Berlin next week.
After winning the first test 3-0, the Australians look set for another victory in Game 2. But despite their impressive record of 23 wins from 28 games against Spain, the Hockeyroos struggled in the physical contest, only finding the net in the last 15 minutes. The Spaniards, ranked 9 in the world, managed a consolation goal in the dying stages. Hockeyroos captain Rochelle Hawkes says the team will be looking to get back to top form in tomorrow's 3rd test.
The high altitude does make it difficult. You find that you need probably about 10 days to adjust, and that's why we came over to Europe early.
A desperate basket on the final buzzer has given the Houston Rockets a 95-92 victory over the Utah Jazz, levelling their best-of-7 NBA playoff series at 2 games all. Houston's Eddie Johnson only scored 1 basket in the second half, and what a strike it was.
Back to Maloney. Maloney turns. Eddie at the buzzer. Yeah! Oh, mother! Eddie Johnson! Holy cow! Eddie Johnson does it again! Unbelievable! This place is pandemonium.
You talk about a clutch shot, Dean.
The Philadelphia Flyers are the first team in the Stanley Cup final with a 4-1 win over New York Rangers in the best-of-7 series. It'll be Philadelphia's first finals appearance in a decade. The Flyers will meet the winners of the Western Conference. In that series, Detroit are leading Colorado 3-2.
The New York Rangers had to win the game to stay alive and were well worth their 2-1 lead.
Hit drive by Karpatsev. Rebound, score! Tikkanen!
The Flyers had a 3-1 game lead to protect and soon drew level.
Creeping on in.
It was then that Rod Brindamore caught fire and the Flyers went ahead 3-2.
On comes Terry and check. Back to the front.
There was desperation for the Rangers as the game slipped away.
Moves in and throws a good hard hit. And you can see Lindros watch it come off the bench and think about it. Oh, man.
But Brindamore ended the Rangers' season with his second strike of the game.
Change things. Here's a rebound. Goal! Brindamore!
4-2, the final score.
Briefly, in other world sports, England has scored a 3-0 whitewash in the one-day cricket series against Australia after their 6-wicket victory at Lord's overnight. In golf, Australia's Carrie Webb has picked up $100,000 at the LPGA Skins game in Texas. Sweden's Annika Sorenstam was the big winner, taking home $220,000. The 81st Indianapolis 500 motor race in the United States has been postponed until tomorrow after heavy rain drenched the Brickyard track. And one of the world's most coveted football trophies has arrived in Australia. Glistening in all its glory in Sydney today was the English FA Cup. It's here as part of a world tour to raise money into lung cancer research and awareness. The Australian Rugby League has warned New South Wales and Queensland players that foul play won't be tolerated in Wednesday night's State of Origin opener at Brisbane's Suncorp Stadium. Both camps are at full strength, with Blues fullback Tim Brasher passing a fitness test later this afternoon.
The only injury worry in either camp is New South Wales fullback Tim Brasher. He twisted an ankle at training, but he does expect to play.
I was very unhappy when it happened, and I felt it go, so it's best just to ice it and rest it and see how it goes. But it hasn't swollen up as yet, so hopefully it'll be great.
New South Wales has won 4 of the past 5 series under former coach Phil Gould, and he thinks the winning sequence will continue, even though he'll be a spectator.
The State of Origin is the biggest thing in rugby league. It's the biggest thing on the calendar each year. It's the highlight of our season, and it's different not being involved with it.
Looking at the sides, Gould suggests it's a case of Queensland's speed in the backs against New South Wales' muscle in the forwards.
There's no doubt I think New South Wales have the edge in the forwards, both in experience and I think in a little bit of class. But and certainly our backs, fellas like McGregor and Hill and Ainscough, big, tough, straight-running sort of players, and they're going to be a handful for the smaller Queensland backs. But speed covers up a lot of evils, and Queensland's got a lot of speed in this game.
And who is he tipping?
I'll be desperately hoping the Blues can win and carry on their good record.
Meanwhile, the ARL judiciary will meet tonight over South Queensland forward Danny Nutley kicking out in this incident against the Sydney City Roosters. Ray Chesterton, SBS Sport.
To our look at the AFL, and the Western Bulldogs continued their stunning start to the AFL season at the weekend with a comprehensive 32-point victory over reigning premiers North Melbourne. The win has confirmed the Bulldogs' growing reputation as one of the most exciting teams in the competition.
When these teams met at the MCG a year ago, North Melbourne won by a mammoth 131 points. Much has changed since. For one thing, the team formerly known as Footscray now runs under the name of the Western Bulldogs.
The Bulldogs' first goal, shepherded by Grant, a goal!
But the name change has been more than merely cosmetic. The Bulldogs, tipped by many to finish in the bottom 4 this season, have found new fire and are now one of 4 teams sharing top spot. Yesterday's emphatic win over the reigning premiers confirmed the Bulldogs' remarkable transformation from a team of easy beats to genuine finals contenders. They are running hard, teaming well and kicking plenty of goals. After Sunday's win, even the sceptics are taking them seriously.
Doesn't he love it, the little fella?
Sydney, meanwhile, will be sweating on the outcome of tonight's tribunal hearing of a striking charge against Starful forward Tony Lockett. Michael Roberts, SBS Sport.
The seas of Queensland's Gold Coast were full of activity last week for the Salika International Billfish Tournament. Game fishing has come under the spotlight in recent years for environmental reasons. However, as we'll see, there's nothing environmentally unfriendly about the sport these days.
The cream of Australian game fishing journeyed to the marlin-rich waters of the Gold Coast to compete in the 1997 Salika International Billfish Tournament. 32 game fishing boats made the resort of Sanctuary Cove their base for 3 days of tag and release competition. Conditions throughout the tournament could best be described as trying, with a stomach-churning swell making anglers work hard for the 27 recorded tags. The event attracted entries from Asia, the United States and New Caledonia. But not surprisingly, home-based anglers put their local knowledge to good use. Queenslanders Tony Riggis and Roberto Scartozzi aboard game fishing boat Mauna Kea took out the event after registering 3 successful hookups. The pair clinched the tournament on the final day by tagging a monster 200 kg blue marlin. In a tight contest, 8 boats were tied for the lead on that final day. Day 1 honours went to the Port Stephens boat Pizzazz, while the Day 2 crown fell to the Sunshine Coast Vicky Ansell aboard Northern Blue 2. Ansell broke through to end the male domination of the sport.
We had a double hook up there at the first, and we only had me fishing, so we had to cut one off. So then we got another one after that, so it was good.
Reigning champs Lucky Strike captured Day 3 honours, overcoming dramas which saw deckhand Tony Crow come off second best after a failed hookup. The successful event was further proof of game fishing's current revival under strict tag and release rules. Every one of the 27 marlin tagged lived to fight another day. While there was nothing savoured for the palate, the overall winners were content to settle for a Toyota Celica. All agreed it was an ideal substitute. Luke West, SBS Sport.
Well, back to yesterday's Ericsson Cup Grand Final now, and there could not have been a better script written for Frank Farina, the Brisbane Strikers and the sport in general. We go back to Suncorp for some of the memorable colour and emotion of the big event. The cameraman is Andrew Doherty. Yes, a wonderful weekend for Frank Farina and the Brisbane Strikers. Our warmest congratulations to them. And that's all we have time for tonight. Till tomorrow, I'm Les Murray. Good night. The Gladiators are entering the arena here.
The noise of the crowd here tells the story. There are over a shot on goal with Hughes and Carrots. Loose ball, Jones.